Hey, I'm Dr. Sebastian Gonzalez with Performance Place Sports Care. One of the product reviews we're doing today is the Ab Dolly. And if you haven't seen the Ab Dolly, it's used quite frequently at Orange Theory Fitness, at least currently. By the time you watch this video, it could or could not be. It comes with a pad as well. I'll go over all the components today that comes with it. Also, too, some form issues that we would like to correct and make sure that everyone's aware about while they're doing some of the activities, who can benefit from it, as well as some other pros and cons. So I hope this is helpful. Hang in there to the very end and I'll give you my final thought on it. So this is our Ab Dolly. I took a few pictures so you can really see what it looks like, because we're going to go in close inspection here and really show you some of the other parts, the durability. It's actually made of a very hard plastic. Very, very indestructible, I'd say. I think it would survive the apocalypse. And these rollers, you actually just kind of plug them in there and they clip right into place within about, I'd say, 30 seconds to a minute. I mean, it didn't take that long out of the package to put together. Now, turning it over, the foam was actually very interesting to me. I just want to show you how actually squishy it is, which is kind of nice because if you put your knees on it, it's going to be irritating if it's too firm. Now, we went through a couple exercises that we saw other people doing and that we've used sometimes in the clinic. So we're demonstrating first with better form, and also I assessed it along the way to see that there is some rounding here on the left low back area. And she actually had no idea she was doing this, which is, I think, the major thing that we need to consider with the Ab Dolly or any other type of exercise, is that rounding right there seems to decrease, and we'll do a side-by-side, when she has less hip flexion, such as the right. The left has a little bit more low back rounding, or in squatting, we'd call that a butt wink. So we really have to control posture while doing this. Now, another thing that we notice is that if you go too deep, it emphasizes that rounding. So really make sure that as you go through these exercises that you are in complete control and know what your normal parameters for trunk stabilization is. Here's another exercise that is commonly used, knee tucks. Again, we see this rounding here. She actually had no idea she was doing this as well. So we recorrected and changed the amount of hip flexion, or changed the range of motion, to show you that it actually decreases. And we're not quite there yet, but I think at this point I probably told her, hey, we're seeing some rounding, so she slowed it down. And we'll do some also screenshots so you can see the range of motion there. As it decreased, there's less flexion of the spine, which usually can create injuries, as opposed to the left side of the screen, which was before. And notice how deep her knees are coming to her chest on the left versus the right. Another exercise is the pike. I'm surprised how well she did at this, actually. I expected this one to be a little bit more challenging in regards to form. Notice that her back is relatively straight. Actually, she did it with her knee actually straight, which was very impressive. And I asked her to do a couple form faults here as well, just to show what some other people might do. So here's a rounding. Again, this is with larger range of motion. And the left side, it was the first time, and the emphasized range of motion was on the right. Now coming down, obviously you don't want to go past your neutral point either. They've addressed this in the intro video as well. Now, we tried to troubleshoot a little bit, and one of the exercises we use in rehab is called Stir the Pot, and you usually do it on a Swiss ball or an exercise ball. This made it kind of challenging, mainly because of the way the rollers were not rolling around exactly how we wanted them to, but I'm not going to fault the Ab Dolly for this, since it's not really designed for this type of maneuver, but it would have been nice to do from a rehab setting. Now, a couple of things you can do are ones when you're laying face up. This is the easier version of the one that we're going to do next, which is bringing the hips into the air. This one seemed very simple and safe. It was really hard to mess up. It was nice to see that she had her trunk all in line, and she had nice control of the dolly as well. Now, standing activities, I wanted her to try a couple of these, mainly because I want to see the gliding motion of the dolly. And one thing I noticed was that, and she's really good at this, is there's some squirreliness about the dolly. We kind of wanted to go forward and backwards, and you can see she stopped because she kind of lost her balance. It's really important for knee conditions to be able to have stackability of that front side leg. The left one's just kind of along for the ride. And I'm a little bit concerned that with the dolly, it gets kind of squirrely for beginners. Now, in the long run, this won't be a bad thing, but obviously as we're teaching technique, it might be a better idea to have them maybe hold some type of suspension device, see her knee diving around there, or it may be a stick possibly, which we'll show you later. This is another way to build someone into the single leg slider lunge type of technique, is use a rag. I'm not saying substitute the rag for the ab dolly the whole time, but in the beginning stages, we want to have a more stable platform so they can focus on better movement. Now, in a different plane of motion, we wanted to see how it worked. It actually worked very well here. And we shot it from actually the other side as well, just to see she's getting her hips back, which is nice. But again, beginners, this is a very advanced move for beginners. And I'm not saying that the ab dolly, as a company said, this is a beginner move at all. But I want to caution people that you need to make sure your form is good before you can use an unstable surface like this. And actually something that we're going to show you here is how to make this a little easier. By the way, that was a bad one. We're just emphasizing how people might normally do it if they're paying attention more to the dolly than their form. Now, this wooden dowel we use for a couple things in our office. It helps them feel more secure and they can drive out of the motion and focus on the quality of motion so they feel a little bit more stable. Again, knee cave is something that we look for on ACL injuries as well as meniscal injuries of the knee. The goal with this one is going to be, again, just like the straight up knee tucks, is that you should have your trunk in a fairly constant position, and we're moving more so at the hips. And the great part about doing this video is that as we did it over and over again, it was kind of tiring her out, so you can see how tough it is. But you see there's some round in the back here. So again, I'd probably decrease her range of motion slightly in knee flexion to get a better trunk position. Now, this is an example of one of the exercises we give in rehab. It's called the dead bug. And just notice how the trunk really doesn't move. And this is kind of the foundation type of exercise that we give for being able to protect the core, the low back, and all the components around there before we give more advanced exercise. This one's called a side bridge. A side bridge is basically like a side plank, but you're hip hinging into a squat. And now you can also add a roll. Ideally, you want to not disassociate the hips from the shoulders. And it is really, really tough to do. But again, it's the control that we're looking for. Just as with using the ab dolly, we got to have complete control of the trunk. Now, a shoulder girdle challenge that I was brought to my attention was this one. This one is pretty hard. I think we got through 3 reps before we were able to do it. It takes a lot of control, a lot of strength, and again, emphasizing smaller range of motion will be the key. Now here's my final thoughts on the ab dolly, and it could change over time. We've only been using it briefly. So number one, let's start with the construction. Is very, very durable. I don't I don't believe that this thing will ever fall apart. Aside from the wheels might pop out or start to wear if you get it on a rough surface, and then you'll hit some, you'll start to wear it down a little bit, so it'll be a little bit of a catch. But for the most part, if you take good care of it, I think it's going to last a very long time. The cushioning is actually very nice because I notice a lot of people with knee conditions, they usually want some type of pad. This one actually we started using with a lot of our other types of rehab as well because it's really comfortable on people's knees. Now, when it comes to if this is for beginner, intermediate, or advanced types of people, I would stick more towards intermediate to advanced, mainly because in theory with rehabbing people, I know this isn't intended for rehab, but a lot of performance and rehab, they kind of blend together, and it starts with being able to control your trunk and being able to move your body the way you're supposed to. A lot of injuries come out of abnormal motions or poor movement patterns, we say. So a lot of times the progression from that we're looking for with people who are untrained or beginners, we say, even some intermediate, is we go from a stable platform or a stable surface to an unstable surface. The ab dolly, because it has wheels and it squirrels around a little bit, I mean that's the whole point of it, it's supposed to move with you, but it's an unstable surface. so beginners might not take it quite as well because they're trying to control the device rather than focus on some of the basic things that we need to teach them first. Next is, you might want to shorten up your range of motion slightly, and as you saw through some of the examples that I showed, that when we shortened up the range of motion, the form improved. And again, these devices, or any type of exercise device, an exercise period, really comes down to what your form is, and I cannot stress that enough. So you might say this device is great or bad, but really it comes down to how you use it. So usually in a rehab or even a training setting, we would go from a lighter load to a heavier load. But before that, you need to make sure that you have the ability to control your body. Now, with that being said, I know that they went through the instruction manual showing some cues and showing how to have proper trunk control with it, which is great. And I've actually done a lot of the same stuff with people here in my office and in Satellite. Is we want you guys to be familiar with what we're expecting of you, and that's the very first step. But sometimes what you really need to do is get hands-on with somebody like a trainer, a strength coach, a therapist, a sports chiropractor, somebody who's going to be able to give you those cues. And the cues that I mean, they're external cues, we call them, versus internal. Internal is when you as a person using this dolly pays attention to what your body is doing versus how it affects the external environment. One of the cues that we might give for trunk stabilization is to cough. And that's to drop the trunk down, or drop the rib cage down to compact this area. And then we need to make sure that they're breathing out of this lower component of the torso region. And this is a whole other video. I'm not going to go into it too much here, but learning how to have proper internal or high intra-abdominal pressure is the #1 step to using this, I believe. And I don't expect a lot of beginners to know that yet, which is why they should get with a coach first. I placed a link below to access the Abdolly on Amazon, and you can read all the reviews on there, see how everyone likes it, and judge for yourself. So again, be careful with any type of exercise equipment that you actually do use at home if you do not have someone coaching you through it. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have external cues and someone watching you, teaching you technique, just like everything else, just like riding a bike, just like learning how to hit a baseball. You need to drill in technique multiple times before you get it. Again, I'm Sebastian Gonzalez, and take care.